Jack Reynolds, a CEO who steps into his own dealership to uncover how his employees are truly treating their customers, and what he discovers will change everything. The Texas sun blazed overhead, casting sharp reflections off the sleek glass walls of Sun Valley Motors in Austin, a dealership known for its luxury cars and upscale clientele. The pristine rows of high-end vehicles gleamed under the afternoon light, perfectly aligned like a showroom from a magazine cover. Inside, polished floors stretched out beneath rows of glistening SUVs, sedans, and sports cars, each one meticulously cleaned and staged for the day's wealthy visitor. The air carried a faint mix of leather, new car polish, and the subtle hint of designer cologne wafting from sharply dressed salespeople who moved with a smooth, almost rehearsed efficiency. Jack Reynolds, the man behind it all, parked his weathered pickup truck across the lot, a deliberate contrast to the showroom's spotless display of imported cars. Casually dressed in worn jeans, a crisp button-down shirt with rolled sleeves, and a well-loved pair of boots, he adjusted his baseball hat before stepping out. His clothes might not have screamed CEO, but his sharp eyes missed nothing. Today wasn't about appearances. Today, Jack was here to see firsthand how customers, especially those who didn't look like they were ready to drop six figures, were treated. Though Sun Valley Motors bore his name, Jack rarely announced himself. He believed the best way to measure the integrity of a place was to watch it in action without warning. As he walked toward the entrance, he caught sight of salespeople huddled together, casting quick glances at the latest arrivals. Businessmen in designer suits, couples stepping out of expensive cars. Jack smirked to himself. Would they treat him the same way? Pushing open the gleaming glass doors, a rush of cool air conditioning hit him, a sharp contrast to the desert heat outside. The dealership was as perfect as expected, but Jack wasn't here to admire cars. He was here to observe the people inside, especially the manager whose leadership had recently raised quiet concerns. And within moments, his test would begin, though none of them knew who he really was. As Jack stepped further into the polished showroom, his sharp gaze swept across the floor. Sales consultants hovered near the latest models, ready to pounce on well-dressed customers, but none seemed to notice him. A man in worn jeans and dusty boots didn't exactly fit their profile of a serious buyer. Jack took his time, casually moving from one vehicle to the next, trailing his fingers thoughtfully along the sleek curves of a black SUV. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a young woman watching him from behind a reception desk. Lisa Tran, her name tag gleaming against her blazer. Lisa hesitated, clearly uncertain whether to approach. Her eyes flicked between Jack's hat, a weathered baseball cap that hinted at working-class roots, and his rugged boots. She bit her lip, debating whether to treat him like every other customer or to walk away like the others seemed to do. But before she could make a move, Marcus Ellison, the dealership's general manager, emerged from his glass office like a shark sensing blood in the water. Marcus was everything Jack expected from a manager more concerned with image than substance. Immaculately dressed in a tailored suit, gold watch gleaming on his wrist, sharp eyes scanning for real buyers. He walked directly toward Jack, intercepting Lisa in the process. "It's fine, Lisa, I'll handle this one," Marcus said smoothly, a sharpness undercutting his professional tone. Lisa looked uncertain but nodded, retreating to her desk, though she kept glancing in Jack's direction, clearly uncomfortable. "Good afternoon, sir," Marcus began, his smile polite but strained, eyes flicking down to Jack's hat and back up. "Looking for something specific today?" Jack smiled faintly, sensing the tension. "Just browsing for now," he replied casually, continuing to look at the row of cars. Marcus's smile tightened. "Of course," he said, voice lowering just enough to betray the real message behind his words. "Just so you know, we tend to work with clients who are a little more serious about buying." Jack raised an eyebrow, his smile fading. "Is that right?" he said calmly. "Yes," Marcus said, crossing his arms. "We like to maintain a certain atmosphere here. Our customers expect that." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Marcus. The test had begun, and Marcus was already failing. Jack stood in front of a gleaming black SUV, his hand resting casually on the mirror as Marcus lingered a few feet away, arms folded tightly across his chest. The temperature inside the dealership was cool, but the heat in Marcus's tone was unmistakable. "I'm just saying," Marcus continued, his voice smooth but laced with condescension, "our clients tend to expect a certain standard. We cater to a more refined crowd here, folks looking for serious investments." His gaze slid deliberately from Jack's boots to his hat before resting back on Jack's face. Jack's jaw tensed slightly, though his expression remained outwardly calm. "A certain standard?" he echoed, his tone steady but sharp, forcing Marcus to commit to the implication hanging in the air. Marcus gave a tight smile, clearly assuming Jack hadn't caught on or wouldn't push further. "You know, people who appreciate quality, luxury. People who align with the values this dealership stands for." Jack tilted his head slightly, studying Marcus in a way that made the manager visibly shift his weight. "And what values are those exactly?" Jack asked, his voice still calm but now carrying an edge. Marcus hesitated for just a moment. Enough for Jack to see the flicker of discomfort, but then Marcus straightened his shoulders, doubling down. "We like to avoid distractions, political statements, things that might make other customers uncomfortable." His eyes flicked again to Jack's hat before adding with a smirk, "I'm sure you understand." Jack held his gaze for a long moment, then spoke evenly. "Let me get this straight. You're asking me to leave because of my hat?" Marcus gave a thin smile. "I am asking you to consider if this is the right place for you. I can recommend a dealership more aligned with your style." Across the room, Lisa watched nervously, her hands twisting together as she pretended to organize paperwork. Several employees had also picked up on the conversation, glancing over with uneasy expressions, though none dared to intervene. Jack exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing just slightly. "That's quite the policy," he murmured. "Do you have that written somewhere, or is this something you make up as you go along?" Marcus's smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. "We have a reputation to uphold," he said firmly. Jack let the silence stretch, letting Marcus stew in his own words before replying. "Funny, I thought reputation was about how you treat people, not how they look." Marcus's face reddened slightly, but before he could answer, Jack gave him a cool nod. "Appreciate the insight," Jack said smoothly, turning toward the exit. As he walked away, the room seemed to grow heavier, the staff's eyes following him, fully aware that something significant had just happened, even if Marcus didn't realize it yet. Jack stepped out into the blazing Texas sun, pausing for a moment as the heat pressed against his skin, but it wasn't the temperature that burned. What lingered was the sharp sting of what had just happened. He stood beside his old pickup truck for a moment, glancing back at the dealership's towering glass walls that gleamed as if nothing inside was broken. To anyone passing by, Sun Valley Motors looked like a shining example of success, but Jack now saw it differently. A place rotting from the inside, hidden beneath polished surfaces. Instead of leaving, Jack crossed the street to a nearby coffee shop, grabbing a black coffee before settling into a shaded patio seat with a clear view of the dealership. From his vantage point, he could see inside through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sales team, the customers, and Marcus, still moving around like he ran the world. Jack took a slow sip of his drink, watching as Marcus laughed and smiled at sharply dressed clients, a stark contrast to the way he had treated Jack minutes before. Inside, Jack noticed Lisa moving nervously around the floor, her shoulders tense, her eyes glancing at Marcus every time she approached a customer. There was an invisible weight on the employees, Jack realized, a pressure to conform, to keep up appearances, to act as though they were only there for a specific kind of person. The way Marcus barked quiet orders and corrected employees with sharp glances made it clear that this wasn't an isolated incident. This was culture, and it had been allowed to fester. Jack leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. He thought about what this dealership was supposed to represent. Respect, fairness, professionalism, values he had built his company on. What he saw now was a betrayal of everything he stood for. As he took another sip of coffee, Jack pulled out his phone and made a calm but deliberate call. "Rebecca," he said, when the regional manager answered, "we need to talk. Tomorrow, first thing." His voice was cool, but the storm was building beneath the surface, and when he returned they would know exactly who he was. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the large windows of his home office, Jack Reynolds sat behind his desk, his expression calm but purposeful. He glanced at the notepad in front of him, where a few sharp bullet points summarized everything he had observed at the Austin dealership. The clock on the wall ticked closer to 10 a.m. sharp, the time he had set for his conference call with Rebecca Gomez, the regional manager overseeing that branch. When the line connected and her professional voice came through, Jack greeted her smoothly, though there was an edge of gravity she picked up on immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," Rebecca said. "You mentioned wanting to discuss the Austin location?" Jack leaned back slightly in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Yes, Rebecca," he said, his voice measured but firm. "I visited the dealership yesterday." There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by Rebecca's curious but careful response. "Oh, how did it go?" Jack exhaled slowly, letting the pause hang before speaking again. "Let's just say it was enlightening." He launched into a calm but detailed account of everything that had transpired, from Marcus's condescending behavior, the refusal to treat him as a real customer, to the atmosphere of fear and discomfort among the staff, especially Lisa. He didn't leave out a single detail, his words painting a clear picture of a toxic culture that had been allowed to take root under Marcus's leadership. By the time Jack finished, Rebecca was quiet for a moment, clearly processing the weight of what she had just heard. "Mr. Reynolds," she said finally, her tone serious, "I'm truly sorry to hear that. I had some suspicions, complaints have come through, but nothing as clear or detailed as this." Jack nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Rebecca, I'm not just asking for a report. I'll be handling this personally. I'm going back today as the CEO, not some casual customer. I want them to see who they turned away." Rebecca's voice was steady but carried a hint of tension. "Understood, sir. I'll make sure they're ready." Jack's gaze hardened. "Good. It's time to remind them what we stand for." Later that afternoon, as the sun reached its peak, Jack Reynolds pulled into the dealership's lot once more, but this time there was no hesitation in his stride. He stepped out of his truck, adjusted his hat, the same one Marcus had judged him for, and headed straight for the entrance. Unlike the day before, he moved with unmistakable authority, his back straight, his gaze sharp, and the air around him charged with quiet power. As the glass doors slid open, the showroom, filled with chatter and the soft hum of sales pitches, fell unusually silent as eyes turned toward him. Lisa Tran was the first to recognize him, her eyes widening as she stood frozen in place, a file still clutched in her hands. The young woman stared, realization dawning fast, and she immediately straightened as if readying for something big. Across the room, other employees paused mid-task, murmuring quietly as they noticed Jack's determined entrance. But it was Marcus Ellison's reaction that was most telling. The general manager emerged from his office, adjusting his cuffs and glancing up casually, only to go pale the moment he saw Jack. The confident smirk Marcus wore yesterday was gone, replaced by visible confusion and unease. "Mr. Reynolds," Marcus stammered, forcing a tight smile, I didn't realize you were coming today." Jack met Marcus's gaze evenly, his voice calm but carrying an edge that silenced the room. Without another word, Jack gestured toward Marcus's office, his eyes never leaving the man's face. "Let's talk, now." Marcus swallowed hard, glancing nervously at his staff, but turned and led Jack to his office. The door closed behind them, but the glass walls left little to the imagination for the employees watching in anxious silence. Inside, Jack took a seat, his posture relaxed but firm, the kind of stillness that commanded attention. Marcus remained standing for a moment, clearly rattled, before reluctantly sitting across from him. "Do you know why I'm here?" Jack asked quietly, though his eyes burned with intensity. Marcus fumbled, shifting uncomfortably. I assume it's about yesterday, sir. I want to apologize." Jack held up a hand, stopping him cold. "Stop. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here because what I saw yesterday is unacceptable. And I need to make sure you understand why." Marcus's face flushed, his hands fidgeting on the desk. "Mr. Reynolds, I didn't know who you were. If I had—" "And that's the problem," Jack cut in sharply, leaning forward. "It shouldn't matter who I am. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, whether they're wearing a suit or jeans, whether they're driving a sports car or a pickup truck. You didn't just turn away a customer, Marcus. You disrespected everything this company stands for." Marcus looked down, speechless. Jack's voice softened but remained firm. "Let me be clear. Leadership is not about image. It's about integrity, respect, and how you treat people when you think no one is watching, and you failed that test." Marcus opened his mouth, but Jack stood before he could speak. "Effective immediately, you're relieved of your duties." Marcus's eyes widened, panic replacing arrogance. "You're firing me?" "Yes," Jack said flatly. "And when you think about why, I hope you remember that no amount of polished suits or fancy words will make up for treating people poorly." Without another glance, Jack walked to the door, pausing as he looked back. "Consider this your lesson, and let it be a warning to anyone else who forgets what we stand for." Then Jack stepped out, ready to face the staff and begin repairing what Marcus had broken. As Jack stepped out of Marcus's office, the entire showroom fell silent, every eye fixed on him, waiting. Gone was the tension from before, now it was replaced with curiosity, hope, and uncertainty. The staff had watched their untouchable manager get summoned and fired in a matter of minutes, and no one quite knew what would happen next. But Jack did. He walked calmly to the center of the room, adjusting his hat as he looked around at the stunned employees. "I know what you're all thinking," Jack began, his voice steady but warm. "You're wondering if what happened in there means things are about to change." A few heads nodded, and Jack continued, scanning the room. "Let me answer that right now. Yes, things will change. Starting today." His tone sharpened, filled with resolve. "What I saw here yesterday doesn't reflect who we are as a company, and it won't be tolerated in any Sun Valley Motors dealership ever." Jack's eyes found Lisa, who stood near the edge of the group, looking equal parts nervous and relieved. "I watched yesterday as one of you tried to do the right thing," he said, giving her a small nod. Lisa's cheeks flushed, but she stood a little taller. "And I saw the rest of you stuck in a system that made you afraid to speak up." The room stayed quiet, but now the staff leaned in, listening intently. "This company was built on respect, integrity, and service to everyone, not just people who look a certain way," Jack continued. "From this moment on, I expect each of you to carry that standard, and I'll be watching to make sure of it." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle, then smiled slightly. "And for those of you who've been waiting for a change, it's here. Rebecca Gomez will be here to oversee things, and Lisa," he added, turning to her directly, "you and I will be talking soon. I see leadership in you." Lisa blinked, surprised but clearly moved. As Jack finished, a ripple of quiet but genuine applause spread through the room, and for the first time, the staff seemed to breathe a little easier, knowing they had a leader who truly saw them. In the weeks that followed, the transformation at Sun Valley Motors was undeniable. Where once there had been tension and fear, now there was a sense of unity and purpose. Staff members who had once kept their heads down out of fear of Marcus's wrath began to find their voices, treating every customer with genuine respect, not because they were told to, but because they now felt empowered to do so. Lisa Tran, newly appointed as assistant manager in training, quickly became a natural leader among her peers, working closely with Rebecca Gomez to reshape the dealership's culture. She made it her mission to ensure that every customer who walked through their doors, regardless of appearance, was welcomed and valued. Customers, too, began to notice the change. Word of mouth spread quickly, and soon the Austin dealership developed a reputation as the place where everyone was treated like a VIP, whether they arrived in a luxury car or a pickup truck. Sales improved, but more importantly, morale soared, and employees took pride in their work again. Beyond Austin, Jack's intervention sparked a company-wide initiative, with other locations undergoing leadership reviews and staff training on respect, inclusivity, and customer service excellence. Town halls and workshops were held, giving employees a chance to share their voices and concerns without fear. Jack himself visited several dealerships unannounced, making it clear that the lessons learned in Austin were to be a standard across Sun Valley Motors. What began as a quiet test of leadership had become a turning point for the company, a reminder that true success lies in how people are treated, not just how much they buy. As Jack Reynolds sat in his office weeks later, reflecting on everything that had unfolded, he knew this was about far more than one bad manager or one dealership. It was about the kind of company he had built and the kind of leader he chose to be. The incident in Austin had reminded him of a simple but powerful truth. Real leadership is measured in moments when no one expects you to act. It's easy to talk about values like respect and integrity in meetings or hang them on walls, but living those values when it's uncomfortable is what defines true leadership. Jack realized that success isn't measured by profits or polished showrooms, but by the dignity with which people are treated, employees and customers alike. Looking back, he felt proud not just because he corrected a wrong, but because he inspired others, like Lisa, to rise and lead. The Austin dealership wasn't just running better now, it had become an example for the entire company. And as Jack looked out his window, he smiled quietly to himself, knowing this was the legacy he wanted to leave, a company built on respect, leadership, and heart. The story of Jack Reynolds and the Sun Valley Motors dealership teaches a profound lesson about the true power of leadership. It highlights that leadership isn't just about titles or authority, but about acting with integrity, respect, and humility, even when it's inconvenient. Jack's decision to confront the toxic culture at his dealership, not by shaming anyone publicly, but by addressing the issue directly, shows that leaders must lead by example. The incident at the Austin dealership revealed how small biases and exclusionary practices can erode a company's foundation, and how treating people with dignity and respect is the real measure of success. The story also teaches that empowering employees to speak up and stand by their values is a critical part of building a healthy work environment. Jack's leadership transformed the dealership from a place where fear ruled into one where every person was valued, regardless of appearance or background. It's a powerful reminder that a company's reputation isn't just about what it sells, but about how it treats people, employees, customers, and everyone involved. True leadership is about lifting others up and setting a standard that everyone can follow.